Well, Steve Coogan's still here. I'm also joined by the Mumsnet founder, Justine Roberts, the author and critic, Will Self, and Boyd Hilton, the TV and reviews editor of Heat magazine. Thanks all very much for coming in. So the big question, is this a proper sea change? Will something permanently change? Will?
I rather suspect not. I kind of blame the people, actually. I mean, I think a lot of energy is concentrated on looking for the bad apples or the agency that's involved in this. But the fact of the matter is that there is a ubiquitous appetite for what the gutter press have peddled. And now there are other media that can do the same job that an actual physical newspaper does. And I see no reason. In a way, I think this whole imbroglio is epiphenomenal. What it is evidence of a transition between print and electronic culture. This is something that's happening between the tectonic plates of two different
But you're saying
that
the public hasn't actually felt a shift which will make people want to stop reading this stuff?
The public, I mean, with the best will in the world towards the great British public, they went out there and bought the news of the world year in, year out. They wanted to put their money up for Help for Heroes or whatever kind of pedo-bashing campaign it was, but at exactly the same time they were engaged in a kind of titillation and a kind of unveiling. You know, it's Oscar Wilde, you know, the native land of the hypocrite.
Justine Roberts.
Well, I think the public did get involved, and certainly public on social media got involved for the first time, and we saw what social media can do when people individually decide to take direct action when they're disgusted by something. And I think that is a change. I think, you know, we've been relying on print media to do this job for us, and barring a few notable exceptions, they just hadn't. We've been relying on the police and we've been relying on the government, and all those institutions have failed. But up stepped a lot of angry individuals, and Millie Dale made that sea change in people's thoughts.
But we're getting used to the sort of the uprising of the angry individual. I mean, the comparisons being made, not least by Cameron, of the bankers and the financial crisis, and of course of the MPs' expenses. Each of these are sort of landmark moments. Do you think this is one, and do you think that it will have a permanence?
I think there will be a permanence if the fundamental issue is addressed, which is there is too much power concentrated in the hands of media moguls. You know, why were the government running scared? Why were the politicians running scared? And why was the media running scared? Because they were all terrified of being turned over, you know, by essentially a blackmailing racket.
That net still exists right at the top.
But I think the magic is broken. The spell is broken because ordinary people actually, you know, on Twitter, on Facebook, on Mumsnet, have actually made a difference.
Ordinary people have done such a great job in, you know, changing the financial setup of the country since 2008, or changing the parliamentary setup of the country since the expenses scandal.
Yeah,
what evidence do you have for this great success of social media?
Well, I think here we have some evidence, and it is slightly different because what you have here is consumer power. No, you know, when you can put pressure on Ford and you can put pressure on...
OK, let me bring in Boyd a second. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Seeing, OK, so on the one hand you've got the advertisers kind of pulling out, arguably that's what sort of pushed Murdoch to that point. But yet, you know, phone hacking may be illegal, but your magazine and plenty like it will still do the close-up of the zit or the bikini or the, you know, scruffy neck or the, you know, whatever else it is, and people will keep buying and reading it.
Oh,
that
absolutely,
won't change.
yeah. But I think there's a big difference. I think the British tabloid press has been a unique kind of phenomenon around. There is nothing like it around the world, and in particular that Steve has been talking about tonight, and Will to some extent. That weird mix of kind of self-righteous moralistic fury, faux self-righteous fury, and a very, very old-fashioned social attitudes, you know, homophobia and misogyny and all of that, which I totally agree with. That kind of genre of journalism is a very weird, unique thing, and I do think there may be a slow change in that, and I think what will happen is, because all these papers, those tabloids are being run by fairly old people who think they have to appeal to a kind of fantasy version of Middle England that buys into all of that, whereas actually our readers are more interested in David Beckham and his pants. They don't want to be preached to about in some fake way. They equally don't particularly need to know about Steve Coogan's life.
Does that reassure you? Would you prefer to have a close-up lens than a hacked phone?
Well, I think there is a difference between a certain kind of fun kind of populist journalism than something which is vicious. And I don't read Heat magazine, but I know a lot of people who do, and I don't see a great deal of, you know, that to me is sort of the acceptable face. Of course people are going to want to read about people's private lives. As you know, Hugh Grant said the other day, it may be of interest to the public, but it's not in the public interest. I think there is a middle ground. It's not a kind of either or that the tabloid is going to end tomorrow. You can have a healthy populist press and a free press, as long as it's properly regulated.
If you look at the Daily Mail, which is very interesting, because the print edition of the Daily Mail is still trotting out the same stuff as well. If you look at the online,
there's a different generation.
Yeah, it's all about Kim Kardashian in a bikini, you know, and I think that is the Daily Mail that we'll see in 10 years' time, rather than this rather horrible thing you've got. I think there is room for irreverent, cheeky, fun look at celebrity world without it being horrible and nasty.
It's interesting hearing that it's the moral tone or the moralising tone that people object to necessarily, rather than the
well, we had a marvellous demonstration of it in the earlier conversation with the man from the Quondam employee of the News of the World, marvellously fulfilling this kind of rat-like, kind of feral persona and being beaten back by Steve.
He's
like
got no right to reply, so, you know, come on, Will.
I mean, I wish I had everybody's faith that this is some kind of sea change. I think, you know, what goes around comes around. And the interesting thing about the net is it's, you know, awful coinage. It's a glocal phenomenon. So what it does is it's able to concentrate people, these angry individuals on Mumsnet or wherever, in the cause of righteousness, but it's equally able to concentrate prurience.
All right.
To concentrate
let me ask you something
bathing
then. Because, you know, the way our press works, and of course this is, you know, typical of how we operate, that we go in pendulum swings, of course, and presumably in a week's time people will be going, oh God, was that really bad? We shouldn't have let the News of the World fold because, you know, it's taken us down the wrong line. Do you think that's going to happen now?
No, I don't think that's going to happen at all. I mean, I don't think that there is some... I think the argument that's presented, that this idea that our unique kind of
we all got
hypocritical...
carried away, put it that way.
No,
I do think there is a strand of tabloid journalism that was powered by hacking. And hacking now, I think, is probably history. And it was the steroid that allowed tabloid journalism to carry on surviving in a time when it was essentially in decline. Take that steroid away, what have you got left? I mean, yes, we all move online and look at, you know, people's waistlines, but maybe the stuff, the really nasty stuff, the stuff where they essentially hold people to a
I think
that can be, you know, everyone being, you know, question, is this person anorexic 1 week or have they put on baby weight the next?
But it is blackmail. It's not really listening to people's private conversations and then forcing them to out themselves, or they will be public.
Talking about what people talk about in pubs and in workplaces, about people's body sizes, it's on a completely different level to what you get in the horrible recesses of
I don't think there's been any kind of Damascene conversion by the tabloids because all this has come out. It's just they got caught.
Yeah.
And they've, you know, and really the only reason that they're addressing this is because it hit them in the wallet and suddenly they grow a conscience. They will revert to type unless there's some sort of regulation.
But also, the reversion to type will also occur because people want to see celebrities brought low or people in the public eye. There is a great popular appetite for that. Not just laughing at people's...
Is it?
It's not going to change because it's symptomatic of a kind of weird demagogic faux egalitarianism in our culture, the kind of big brother culture, the idea anybody can be a star. QED, anybody can be dragged down from that pedestal as well.
And just interesting, the elites will still be there, woven together.
They will, but hopefully power will be dispersed a little bit from where it is at the moment, which is entirely in the centre of two or three.
Why do you think that'll happen?
Well, because I think we've basically our sort of the aura of Murdoch has disappeared with this. I think Murdoch is in trouble and people won't roll over and governments won't kowtow and Tony Blair won't fly there and David Cameron won't fly here to meet him anymore.
Last word to you, Steve.
Well, I mean, I like to think things will change, but I think that, you know, unless we have some proper regulation and the tabloids can no longer hide behind this idea that it's either freedom of the press or regulation. You can have proper regulation, not the PCC, they're a waste of time, and you can still have a healthy free press. It's not either or.
Okay, thank you all very much indeed. Thanks for coming in.